First of all, I don't think of Bitcoin. I've sort of changed the way I think about it, and Jeff Booth has helped a lot with this for me in listening to him talk about it. Bitcoin itself isn't deflationary money, and I've said that in the past, and so I need to, redact everything I've said. Bitcoin is neutral money, right? It's an unchanging monetary supply. So right now, the supply issuance is disinflationary, meaning it's decreasing over time as as the new Bitcoin comes on board. But overall, there are 21 million. There only ever will be 21 million Bitcoin, right? Lots of them have been lost too. But so I think the best way to think about Bitcoin is it's neutral money. And when we're talking about deflationary prices, as Jeff Booth again eloquently points out often and much better than I do, life should be deflationary. As humanity progresses, as technology progresses, we should see that being reflected in lower prices and a higher quality of life. Bitcoin simply reflects that. So as it goes up in value, what I like to turn it on its head. Everybody gets all, focused on the number go up technology, NGU. I like to think of it as prices go down technology. I think that's a better way to think about it. I also think it's healthier, and it's less
Life is cheaper technology. Yeah.
Exactly. So I love that. It creates more separation between proof of stake crypto, which is nonsense, speculative garbage, and prices go down technology. So that's just a healthier way to think about it, because I believe, we're going to experience that for the rest of our lives as Bitcoiners living on a Bitcoin standard, and as more and more of the world adopts the Bitcoin standard. We're just going to see prices go down over time. And I think Sailors, right? He said, it's going up forever. What he means, if you turn that inversely, is prices will go down forever. I believe that. I don't think they're going to go down as rapidly as they are this decade. Certainly, they will never go down as rapidly as they did last decade. Last decade, from like 2011 to 2020, at least by my calculations, the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate of Bitcoin, was about 189%, 190%. I think that's slowing down this decade to around 50% ish. And I think it's going to continually slow down, and it'll eventually reach sort of a basal rate that will just sort of reflect the growth of humanity and the progress of technology being reflected. I don't know why, but a lot of Gen Xers who are prominent speakers talk about this, and I feel responsibility because I'm a Gen Xer. I'm right in the middle of Gen X, and so they're smart people. I listen to these people regularly. They have great macro takes. They understand the world, but they get stuck on certain issues with Bitcoin, and so they still can't quite cross the Rubicon and come over yet. It's just so interesting to me. So I think that what they're missing is Bitcoin. They think of, like, they love to compare, and they talk about private money and how all of these private monies by banks failed. I think that's like saying multiple intranets failed in the past, and they should fail, and they will fail. And that's actually how I view, again, proof of stake cryptocurrencies. Those are intranets. Those are literally like, look at my marketing campaign, look at this cool thing I do, come over to my blockchain, and we're going to, change the world and make a bunch of money. It's just all nonsense. And they literally have just devolved into nonsense. They still are making 100x their gains. Who makes 100x their gains? It's the people that the influencers put out a ton of marketing for and venture capital backs. And then these little tiny nonsense coins go up 100x or 1000x. And people think that they're, being smart. That has nothing to do with Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin to me is like the internet, and all of these proof of stake cryptos are like the intranets. So when people talk about, well, all of these private currencies failed in the past, well, yeah, that's because who's going to use the Bank of Ohio's money? You can't use it anywhere unless you're, within a 20-mile radius of it. It's so limited. They were obviously destined to fail. It was sort of an interesting experiment. When people compare that to Bitcoin, they're just being, for lack of a better word, they're being stupid. They don't understand that Bitcoin is like the internet. It's everywhere. It already is ubiquitous. It's already accessible by everybody. It's literally decentralized and secure and designed to be the money for the world. So, the internet of money, as Jack Dorsey would say. And that's true. And so what those people just don't understand, that they're limited. They're thinking of it like a company intranet, and that's just a bad comparison. So they're going to learn that over time, right? It's the same kind of people who say, like, well, what if they just shut down the Bitcoin network? And I like to say, well, if actually shutting down Bitcoin is as easily as just shutting down the internet, which is to say you can't shut down the internet, right? And then people, well, what if there's a world war or something? Like, well, still the internet's going to survive in different parts of the world. And as long as one Bitcoin node survives somewhere, Bitcoin survives, right? And so all of those kind of arguments are just baseless and stupid, and they cast fear, uncertainty, doubt on people. that's fine. It keeps the price lower for now. It helps us to get in at cheaper prices. They're eventually going to learn. I went through all of these very things myself. I was very concerned that the government was going to shut Bitcoin down back in like 2019 and 2020. They possibly could have, but there's really no reason to. And again, for a government or even a coalition of governments to band together to try to stop it, it would be massively expensive. And in the end, they would lose anyways. And so it's kind of ridiculous. So I guess I'll stop there. That's what I have to say about that.
I do want to go into some Warren Buffett, like Groman and Preston the other day were just talking about this. So I'd love to get your thoughts on his cash. And he just continually keeps growing his balance sheet with cash over the last 15 years.
So he's widely applauded for that strategy. And in the past, that has worked very well. Like that is a great fiat strategy to build up your huge fiat pile and wait for the markets to collapse and then be able to rush in like they did in 2008, 2009 and swoop in and buy all of these things at a massive discount or get like very favorable terms on preferred stock and things like that. That's the Warren Buffett method. It's made him a billionaire, right? And I come from that school, right? I started Vailshire, my business, as a value investor in the Warren Buffett style. I used to listen to Preston Pysh all the time pre-Bitcoin, and I went along with him on my Bitcoin journey, and we kind of discovered it at the same time. And he's what helped me be okay with that as a value investor getting into Bitcoin, which again back then was considered as this wildly speculative asset, right? I do have respect for Buffett, even though he's obviously very misinformed about Bitcoin, right? He calls it rat poison, and Charlie Munger, they both are just he was very against it. I get that, right? He's old, dude. The dude's he's over 90 years old. Why would anyone care about what a 90-year-old thinks about a new technology, right? So of course he doesn't understand it. He got Apple like 20 years too late. He doesn't invest in technology. He always says, I know nothing about technology. Basically, I like things I understand, like railroads and newspaper businesses and things like that. Bless his heart, right? He's been very successful. So he was the most successful fund manager of the last century, and that should not go unacknowledged. And even though he has a bad Bitcoin take, he's a master capital allocator. Many months ago, that's what I was saying about Saylor before this became kind of widely known, that I said he's like the Warren Buffett of Bitcoin. Like he understands capital allocation. A lot of people use the term speculative attack, but I think that's too aggressive, and I think that raises the hackles of U.S. politicians and financiers. I like the term, which I just coined recently, speculative arbitrage. And I think that's what he's doing. So Saylor sees the differences. He sees the importance of being able to get rid of a debasing asset with favorable terms, like say 0.625% interest rates on his latest round of debt that he just issued, and take that arbitrage opportunity and put that into very undervalued Bitcoin right now. So getting back to your question, Buffett has this massive pile of cash right now. All of the value investors are golf clapping and saying, wow, he's look at all that cash. I think that's massively foolish. And I think, and I might do this, by the way, I still own a little bit of Berkshire just so I can keep my foot in the door there. I think that shareholders should basically start demanding that while fiat brains think that's a wise strategy, I would say that's a very foolish strategy to hold a melting ice cube, right? Like they have that huge pile in cash. I know when they say cash, by the way, it's usually sitting in short-term treasuries. So they're probably earning 5% interest rates or so on that cash. Golf clap. Well, that's so smart. Good for him. He's ready. He's going to swoop in and buy stuff if the market crashes. In the meantime, though, he's losing the purchasing power of his shareholders. It's actually, not only is it not wise, I would say it's actually kind of dumb. I think that shareholders should put proposals out, and Buffett would be the perfect first target. They should say, you need to put at least 10% of your cash pile into Bitcoin, because you're just losing our purchasing power. Like this is actually a bad investment, even though a lot of people are giving them the golf clap on CNBC and Bloomberg. So that's my take on it. There are a lot of companies like that hold these massive amounts of cash or short-term T-bills. That's not very smart. So I would say that, and I hope Bitcoiners do rise up. Bitcoiners like me who still have one foot in traditional finance and the other foot in Bitcoin. We should start putting shareholder proposals out there for people to vote on, at the very least, because it raises awareness and it allows Bitcoiners to get to talk at the shareholder meetings and just be like, look, hey, we have this, whatever, $100 billion plus in cash. let's put 10% of it in Bitcoin and just see what it does. 10% is not going to make or break the company. If we're right, though, we could pull a sailor and have these massive returns. I think one by one, I think Berkshire will probably be the last to do that. Although Buffett's not going to live forever, right? I'm a doctor. I understand that human life has its limits. He's nearing the end, right? And I don't want him to die. I don't wish anything bad on him, but he's not going to live forever and probably not that much longer. And then the younger generation will take over. I think it'll be interesting to see how they respond. And I think it's possible the very people that got him, to invest like an Apple stock, that wasn't Buffett's decision. It was the younger guy's decision. They may not be as opposed to Bitcoin as he is. So we'll see what happens in the coming years.
You tweeted out even today earlier, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And we've gone really to this next phase, which you have here, which is collectible kind of novelty, and then store of value number 2, 3, medium exchange, 4, unit of account. Can you kind of go into this and kind of your thought patterns? If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.